stakes. I want the voice of political opposition with whom I disagree. I want them to speak for themselves. This is what you could be facing, Generation Z, in 2020.
You know, the UN just released a study that said we're going to be okay if the vast majority of the world goes vegetarian immediately.
Some of it is with light bulbs, some of it is on straws, some of it, dang, is on cheeseburgers, right?
Colleges, churches, charities, should they lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage?
Yes.
Hailing New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo for passing a historic bill legalizing abortion up until birth.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
Just because a woman, or let's also not forget, someone in the trans community, a trans female, is poor, doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to exercise that right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47.
If it makes you feel any better, he fell off his skateboard.
Yes.
Okay?
Self-inflicted harm.
You guys are shouting at the street, like, you know they can't hear you, right?
They will hear us.
So let's recap that real quick. Beto wants to go to your house and confiscate your guns and jail you even if you refuse. Every single candidate, except for Tulsi Gabbard, wants abortions all the way up until birth, but she's a radical right-wing extremist because she wants the cutoff to be 7 months. The Democrats have voiced support for the Equality Act, which would mean that female transgenders could compete in any women's division, in any sport they want, join women's groups, churches, and force beauticians to wax their balls. Yes. Men have periods too, and they know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is just one choking on a Werther's original away from the Supreme Court being changed forever. They are petrified of Generation Z. They are petrified of you. And then I do have to get going. We're going to have a quick reel. I'm going to come back for a Q&A. I have to go see the overflow room. But I know often people it's really easy to come out and just bitch. Right? And I don't think we've been bitching. I've been talking about how great this is for Generation Z, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some steps you need to take. And sometimes people ask me, well, how do we fight back against this? Because, as you mentioned, these are huge companies, big tech. These are huge companies, the media, entertainment, industrial complex. It's really pretty simple, okay? Let's be consistent. We remain entirely consistent and campaign against any and all culture of censorship. I want Generation Z. I want everyone out there to hear the Young Turks and to hear Trevor Noah and to hear Samantha Bee speak for themselves every single week so that we can be here and rebut it. I want to hear Beto everywhere. I want to hear the Democrats cheering gun confiscation. I want them out there banning Halloween candy. I want us to be able to cover fathers who could potentially lose custody of their children because they didn't opt to castrate them chemically effectively. What is it that we do? We can't change what is going on in the world, some of these crazy stories. But what we can do is, rather than the left in attempting to silence voices of dissent, we make sure that their voices are amplified. I want to make sure that every single far left candidate and channel, and I hope that you join me, supports the right of all of them to be on these platforms, to get the same level playing field with suggested feeds, with trending videos. That's all we've ever asked for. People don't necessarily understand. Our case against YouTube is not about censorship. It's about dishonest business practices and not applying the law equally. I think we all need to demand from every single major company who can determine elections, we need to demand what the guidelines are, that we know them, and that there's some system of transparency so that we know that they are applying these laws equally. I want everyone here to be as public and as vocal as possible, because here's the deal. The left, they want to silence us. They want to silence you. They want to ban people. Right now they're talking about banning political ads on Twitter. Has anyone ever thought, does that mean they're banning all media ads? Well, what kind of advantage do you think that is for the left? Donald Trump can't run an ad, nor can Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. But ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, they can all run ads. Do you see what's happening there? It's so subversive. What they want is these conversations to happen behind closed doors and to silence people they disagree with. We shouldn't be doing that. We should demand that their voices be heard on the exact same platform with the exact same amplitude as we do. And instead of behind closed doors, we should make it a very public dogfight, an execution ideologically in the streets so that everyone can witness which ideology is correct. And you know what, Generation Z? You guys are doing that, man. I really appreciate it. I am going to go to the overflow room. I'll be back for a Q&A. Here's a reel of some stuff that you missed, and then my half-Asian lawyer, Bill Richmond, will be right here and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Let's all go to the merch shop and buy ourselves some swag.
Snazzy clothing and swag to buy at louderwithcrowdershop.com. Like this new signature baseball tee, or these Ranger panties, or of course, the Holy Grail itself, Mug Club.
Let's all go to the merch shop, buy ourselves some swag.
Be sure to stop by the merch table in the lobby after the show.
Okay, greetings, A&M. Frankly, truthfully, I wanted to be A&M was my favorite school. It's my favorite place to visit. I would never say that. It's my favorite place. That's what everyone says. But I am busy with my 48-hour Fortnite live stream. And headshot! Look at that. That has gotta hurt.
Sir, I'm 10.
Yeah, well, you gotta grow up sometime. Your case most likely to be a.
Hello, my name is Teresa, and I am a lesbian. Did you know that lesbian couples face many of the same problems that also plague straight couples? This ranges from petty family squabbles all the way to domestic violence. In fact, dyke-on-dyke crimes occur at even higher rates than straight couples living in rural areas. According to research, almost 44% of lesbian couples experience domestic violence, compared to 35% of straight women, 26% for gays. Not to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but I was actually slapped by my girlfriend on the way here. It's time we put an end to this senseless violence by providing shelter for victims in well-carpeted rooms. Please donate at batteredlesbians.org, and let's make sure that no more lesies take beatings from their partners.
You too can stop the abuse by giving generously at batteredlesbians.org.
Hey guys, Whistleblower 22 here. So, long sleeves. Why does Steven Crowder wear them so often? Well, I've put all of this together, and the only possible answer is Steven Crowder has twig arms. I was able to find this in an archive pull post. Overwhelming.
父親が日本人で母親が中国人なんですけれども、日本語に興味を持った方は
Finally, I have concrete confirmation on social media by that kind of black dude on the show. Looks like his days of owning the libs are at an end now that everybody knows he's a beta male. If you like this, subscribe and bookmark my BitChute for when this gets taken down. And also check out my Patreon from the link in the description below to help me move out. Till next time, Whistleblower out.
Give it to you. We can do it on our own. You guys, am I too heavy? No. You're spreading me. You're spreading me.
I'm sorry. I didn't say something. No, really. It's okay. It's not. You know about my ex, right?
Oh. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about.
Jake one?
Okay.
I love how we go from the idea of dating a coworker does not appeal to me. So it's like, that, like maybe it might set some unprofessional circumstances that could be uncomfortable in my day-to-day life. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but also crazy cat person in a basement apartment.
Hey, do you remember what made Halloween so great when we was little? We could go out and get free food. We thought candy was food. Just to show you how poor we was growing up. That's pathetic.
Hey, you still there?
Yeah. Trying some of these.
Your parents never wanted you. You were an accident. Ah!
And he came and he found the disciples asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. I love how they needed, you didn't need to add that. Yeah. God. They're asleep, it's bad enough. Apparently God wasn't a comedy writer, because I would have edited that down for time. Give me some of that.
gon' give it to you.
And I remember we went to this one house, and this hot chick that was in school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We was like in 10th grade trick or treat.
Yeah.
And we didn't have no costume or nothing. Hey, man, give me something to eat. Right? And the hot chick came to the door. It's like, you guys a little bit too old for this. You're in the same class as I am. And we just took off running. That whole school year, I was avoiding that girl. Every time I see in the hall, I would take off running.
Welcome to the stage, half Asian Bill Richmond. Howdy. Eggs, thank you for that welcome. Thank you for everything you've been doing here today. I got to tell you, as Steven mentioned, this whole event wouldn't be possible without our friends over at YAF. If we can give them a big whoop. Ask our friend Reed, who's one of the leaders and the guys making everything happen, to come up here and join me on stage. Tell y'all a little bit about what he's doing. But the first thing I will tell you, if you have a question for the Q&A, go ahead and go up to the lobby. There's only a limited room for people to be able to ask questions, so we've got some folks up there who are going to kind of get us to a place where we have enough folks. Go up there, see Gerald, and see Reg in the back. So again, we'll only have a limited time for Q&A, so just go up there if you want to, and we'll get those in who we can. I will tell you, a few of you don't know this, but I'm not an Aggie, but I did find an Aggie wife. And she's here tonight, but one of the things you have to be a good Aggie husband, you have to remember all the different traditions, which is hard. But my three favorite, I have code words for so that I don't forget them. I've got the leaning lazy tree, and then I've got Guardians of the Grass, and then my personal favorite is penny feet. Why you guys do these, I don't know, but I love them all. So I'm going to turn it over to Reed to tell you a little bit about what YAF is doing here on campus.
Well, howdy. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Sid Ties for making all this possible. None of what we do at YAF is possible without him. We'd also like to thank Young America's Foundation. We'd like to thank Young America's Foundation. They also made a big part of this possible. Everything you see from YAF comes from them. So it's really great, the amount of support we get from them. Well, it's amazing what we've done so far. At this point last year, we had about 10 members. At the beginning of the year, we had about 6 to 8. It's kind of not clear. Now we have 90. So... And we are always looking for new members. So first off, I'd like to bring up that we are hosting Dan Crenshaw and Jonah Goldberg next Monday, November 4th at 7 p.m. And that's going to be right across the way at Rudder Auditorium. So make sure you come out to that. If you can't make that, our next meeting is November 14th at 5:30 p.m. in Rudder 410. We'd love to see you come out. And one last thing, I'd love for you guys to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, shameless plug. It's at TammyYaf on Instagram and Twitter, and then just text A&M Young Americans for Freedom on Facebook. But also be sure to check out our table as y'all leave today. We want to see all of y'all's faces again in the future because we're going to keep growing and we're going to keep getting bigger. So thank y'all.
So it's been an amazing ride here this week, and I know that some of y'all were out there seeing the lines. I'm fairly certain someone told me the line was out past Ibiza, so that's, I guess what, double past the YMCA. And you all know how far that is. You walk it every day. But for those of you who are in Mud Club, we will be announcing where the after party is. So make sure to check your emails, and hopefully we'll see y'all out this evening, get to meet with some of the crew and the different folks out there. So we're really excited. And most importantly, our Mud Clubbers, thank you all. Thank you to the YAF volunteers who've been tireless. They got here yesterday to help. They got here this morning to help. Every single one of them. So we're wrapping up here shortly. We're going to get Steven back out. We're going to do some Q&A. Let's get some love for Steven Crowder.
Thanks again. Let the rest of the crew hear that you love them, by the way, guys. Broken bottle pieces of it. This is a conservative show.
I survived, baby.
Oh, good for you. All right, Gerald, that's enough. So listen, I know that we announced a costume contest winner. We're going to pick one here in the crowd by round of applause, but before, and I did have to change my shoes because they were 2 sizes too big, and I fell backstage, so I'm an idiot. Don't ever look at me, I'm a moron. The costume winners online is actually a man named Danny Weaver. Fat Thor is his costume. I don't know if we have it here at all, but anyway, he just dressed up as a Thor, and he's kind of fat. So, so Fat Thor, you'll be getting a mug club. What is it? Filled with stuff? Filled with candy? I have no idea. He'll be getting something. But we do have something here that is very special for a costume winner. So let's see who we have in the crowd for the costume contest. You're Bernie. I see Bernie. I see a leprechaun. Oh, a hot dog and a hamburger. Yeah, but the other hot dog cheered for my nipples. But are you a black guy and a slave? Or are you just Trudeau? Oh, God. Well, I would give this to you, but I'm afraid I'd be accused of being racist. See who else? We got a man in a gorilla costume. We got Betty, okay. We got Bob Ross. I appreciate it. Oh, all right. You know what? I will say that's getting pretty close. Who else do we have? What do we have here? We have Obi-Wan Kenobi. I could give you this, but I'd rather you find a girlfriend. Are you Stalin? Stalin, okay. Are you Moses? Oh, you're Marx. Okay, you're Marx and you're Che, right? Just like I am. Okay, but I gotta say, mine's better because I have the crappy beard. Joker. All right, listen. Who thinks that Bob Ross should get it here? Put them up. Okay, because he did actually have a painting of Muhammad. Who thinks? So don't follow him home tonight. Wait, you are what?
Goblin Slayer.
You're Goblin Slayer. Is that a real thing?
I like that one.
I'm not as familiar with it. I see a bunch of robes, gorilla. You know what? I think you guys give a round of. Let's give it to Bob Ross right now. Come on up. Come on up, Bob Ross.
Deserved.
And I'll tell you why. The reason Bob Ross is winning this is because you win an autographed portrait that Bob Ross drew of the Bob Ross Estates lawyers eating from a pile of crap next to Muhammad. So, there you go. Thank you, sir. That's not a joke. In case you guys hadn't been following, we painted Muhammad as Bob Ross, and we got an email from the Bob Ross estate saying, you better stop doing that. And we're like, I spoke with half-Asian lawyer Bill Richmond. I said, do we have to respond to this? He's like, you can pretty much do whatever you want. They can't tell you to remove it. So I was like, is it okay if I dress up like Bob Ross and paint these lawyers eating from a pile of crap? And he said, yeah, pretty much. I don't know. And then we never heard from them again. So I always say, we're not necessarily sharks, but we can be one hell of a puffer fish and just make them wish they picked someone else. And thank you guys so much. Okay, so we have a few questions to get to. I don't know how you got in. I guess they didn't card you. What is your name, sir?
My name is Donovan.
Your name is Donovan. Okay, Donovan, what is your question?
I was actually asking if you thought there were any Change My Mind segments where you didn't really get any productive discussion, they were just really all hostile.
You know, I think there's always something productive because the whole idea of Change My Mind and how that came about was, you know, I was at Fox News for 4 years, and I will say this, they never told me what I could or couldn't say, but you did know that there were certain topics that they want to discuss on air, and you only had like 4 minutes to talk about it. And I just said, you know, I have so much better conversations in the green room with these people, where we actually sit down and discuss issues, and we're not on this crazy time limit. I remember sitting down with some friends saying, what if we just actually tried to broadcast this conversation and didn't edit it at all and didn't make it a debate with other political talking heads who were trying to get, a retainer from a nonprofit, but just people who are actually trying to discuss these issues like you have at your dinner table or, your lunch table. And I remember I pitched it to some channels and they said, that'll never work. I said, no one's ever gonna watch that, especially with you. And I said, well, that may be, and then it worked. So in my opinion, every time we do it, it's pretty productive because someone's mind either gets changed or we get to sort of observe the strength of our argument, whether it can stand on its own. That being said, the one that jumps to mind is there was this guy at, I think it was TCU, just came out and he was like, why don't we teach men to not rape? I was like, yeah. Who are you? You're Don Quixote swinging at windmills. Like, what are you mad about? He's like, I don't like rape. I'm like, well, neither do I. He's like, okay. So I didn't think that was super productive necessarily. But outside of that, no, I think I've always been pretty grateful, even if the conversations haven't gone as well as we'd like them to. But I want to make really clear, they're very different from a debate. The whole point to change my mind is to rationalize your position and actually listen to each other and hopefully be able to use the Socratic method in your own everyday life. So we don't treat it like a debate. It's not nearly as aggressive as a debate, but sometimes, people come in hot. They're coming in, don't rape! And you're like, okay, I get it. So thank you very much. Donovan?
Yes.
Thank you, Donovan. I appreciate it. Give it up for Donovan. And I believe, yes, we have a question over here. Yes, sir.
Hey.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, I'm Philip Anderson. It's nice to finally see
What was that?
I'm Philip Anderson. It's nice
Philip.
to finally see you in person.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What's your question?
Well, it's kind of a lot. Gonna try and make it fast. So basically, my name got banned for being a black person who's not a fucking slave. And I'm proud of that.
Wait, you got banned for being a black person who's not a slave?
Yeah, that's literally what happened.
Where from?
I mean, I literally just said things like, hey, if you vote Democrat, I think you're a slave. And they banned me. I'm not even kidding.
Well,
That's
who's
what I said.
they? Like you mean like slave owners?
I mean, like
they were
big
like,
tech.
we don't want him plowing our fields.
All right, here's the...
Like, what do you mean? Like, and you're like, I'm not going to be a slave. Like, all right, you're free to go. You're like, you're banning me now?
I mean, no, seriously. Like, these people, they fucking whip me. Like, go ahead, look up my name, look up New World Patriots without putting the number 2 at the end. It won't come up.
Okay.
It won't come up because they blacklisted me. And the thing I want to ask you about, well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for actually having the fucking balls to talk about free speech. No one does it. TPUSA Charlie's a little pussy these days. That's right.
I don't, one thing is I'm not going to get into the conservative infighting and insult anybody.
All right,
that's not why I'm here. And I've never met Charlie, but all of my interactions
we are proud
with
of
people
your courage. We don't ask you to attack people because we know all the proxies will go after you. We know. Okay. We're just proud of you.
The epoxies? Like, you mean like the stuff you put on a tile?
Yeah, no, I mean the proxies on
I gotta tell you, if that's the reason you were banned as a slave, you probably weren't great. Like, if you think, like, I'm gonna put epoxy here. Like, what? It just needed a coat of paint. Piss off! I'm not your slave. All right, your question, sir.
So basically, my question is, what are we possibly gonna do if Conservative Inc. just completely goes libtard on us with what we're seeing right now, with what they did to Nick Fuentes, where they barred him and they silenced him and they fired their own fucking employee for being in a picture with Nick Fuentes. Charlie, you're crazy. He didn't say that, I said it. Fuck you, Charlie. Anyway, the point is, if we go by the left's rules,
right,
then they win.
Okay.
Because they're getting exactly what they want. We just can't do that. We're giving them exactly what they want.
I just want to make sure, because we do have a lot of people here, and that's why we have to split this up. So what's the question exactly?
The question is, how do we stop Conservative Inc. from doing this, because it feels like it's almost impossible.
How do we stop conservatives from becoming libtards?
Well, how to stop Conservative Inc. from being fake conservatives and demonizing those of us who actually believe in free speech and standing up for people who want to speak freely.
Okay. Well, it's a pretty broad question. So I'm going to try and it's not that it's a hard one. It's that it's almost nonsensical. But I will say this in the sense that I can't answer for any other conservatives. I can answer for myself. So I know that we have defended free speech for people who are conservative. We have defended free speech for people whose views we even view to be completely reprehensible, and even people like Tulsi Gabbard, who, when we saw an injustice, we tried to right it. I would hope, I can't speak for every conservative in the movement, but I would hope that everyone out there who's in a position of authority in the conservative movement would agree with me on that, regardless of where they line up on, I don't know, the war on drugs, or regardless of where they necessarily line up on certain economic issues. I would hope that we could all come together and support freedom of speech, because I'm looking at an entire room of people who, unless, I mean, show of hands or round of applause, anyone here who doesn't support free speech? Okay, so if there are any people in the conservative movement who are leading it, yeah, I think those people should be outed, but I don't know them. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it. All right, you, sir, Alex P. Keaton, yes. What's your name? What's your real name?
Ben Crockett.
Wait, no, you look like that guy. What's the name of the guy in Seinfeld who kept beating George Costanza with the sails and then went to the mental institution? Who knows what I'm talking about? What's his name? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a good-looking guy. It's fine. Go ahead. Okay, what's your question, sir?
So I'm Ben Crockett, and my question for you is, you did a video a while back on cigars with Dennis Prager.
Yes.
And I was wondering, what is your favorite cigar?
Well, what is happening? We're cheering chairs and cigars. You know what's funny as it relates to cigars? I talked about this. When I was being raised, where I was raised in Canada, like everybody smoked cigarettes. And so we would be in a 2-bedroom apartment with 12 people smoking on New Year's Eve, and I hated it. And so I just hated all of it for the longest time. And then a friend introduced me to pipe smoking, and then another friend introduced me to cigars. And it's amazing. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you go to a cigar lounge in this country, you almost can't find a liberal. It's almost impossible. And I don't know why that is, and I started thinking about it, and I think it goes back to sort of being a counterculturalist, right? You used to think of cigarettes, right, as a French existentialist, and I am an asshole, but I'm conflicted. I do a film with an angle that's weird, and nothing happened. And so we hated it. And then, though, it changed because you look at LA, you look at San Francisco, where you can't actually even smoke outside in a public place. And conservatives who probably have never smoked a cigarette in their life said, hold on a second. I don't think that we should be able to tell somebody what they can and can't do in a public space, or certainly not in the privacy of their own home. In San Francisco now, you can't order, unless they reversed it, a vape online. That's how crazy it's gotten. So I don't even know that conservatives like cigars. Like sometimes I go to the cigar lounge and I see conservatives there, you know, and they have like a Trump shirt on, and you can tell that they're like, yeah, okay, I should enjoy this more than I am. So it is amazing. You see that a lot. You see that obviously in gun culture. You see it in cigar culture. A lot of niche subcultures. You see it in MMA. We have a lot of mixed martial arts fans who follow the show. And I didn't even realize this until Jake Shields beat the crap out of some protesters in Berkeley. And he came on the show, and Jake Shields was like a vegan in the UFC, who I always thought was a liberal. He's like, I hate these sons of bitches. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, please be my bodyguard. And he was like, you can't afford me. And I was like, you suck. So, as far as cigars, man, I don't want to bore people with it, but I have a bunch of favorites. You know, I like a lot of Perdomo cigars. I like Brickhouse cigars. I like Padron cigars. I like Nicaraguan cigars that tend to be Habano wrapper or Maduro wrapper cigars. And here's you know what's a good example, actually? Cigars are a great sort of lesson for people in communism. Like Cuba, how many... Wait, hold on. What, do I not have credibility? Is that better? Cuba, right, they have this, like everyone talks about Cuban cigars. And if someone says, I only smoke Cuban cigars, they're an asshole. So, Cuba, though, there is a soil that they have, right? It's God's gift. There is a soil and a flavor, you know, that in a Cuban cigar cannot be replicated, right? Here's what happened with Cuban cigars. They were the best cigars in the country, of course, before we signed the embargo. And I don't know if you know this, but JFK actually had his aide go out and collect over 1,000 Petite Upmanns. Someone who's a cigar aficionado, I think it was Petite Upmanns, or they were the Upmann Petite Coronas. So right before he signed that bill, he was like, go get me all the cigars. They brought it in. Now, after that, what happened is when the cigar companies became nationalized, and I actually have a friend in Cuba who talked to me about this, and I won't use his name for fear of retribution, who grew the most sought-after Cuban cigar wrappers in the world, and he still does, but 90% of it goes to the government, right? They were the best cigars in the world, but 90% of it goes to the government. He told me, I don't even know where it goes. I don't know which cigars it ends up in now. It's almost like what happens is every now and then you get a great Cuban cigar. And you're like, oh my gosh, it has that flavor that's fantastic. But you have to go through 20 cigars that are gross with young tobacco, and they're plugged, and the quality is terrible. And that's just because people aren't incentivized to create good cigars. They have a gift. They're sitting on soil that nobody can replicate. It's like a woman getting a breast reduction. It's just like slapping God in the face. In other words, Cuban cigars have no excuse to not be the best in the world except for socialism and communism. So, roundabout way to answer your question. Thank you very much. I think at the after party there might be a patio with some cigars. Yes, all right. You, sir, with the glasses and the tie. Oh, but look at you. You're very spiffy.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. The knot's a little fat, but, you know. I say this with my pubic hair beard. It's a joke.
All right.
You really think I feel good about myself?
So since the legalization or normalization of gay marriage 7 years ago, we've seen decriminalization.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. What was your name, sir?
Jacob.
Jacob. Okay, Jacob. All right.
So we've seen the decriminalization of transmitting HIV. Transsexuals become normalized. Child drag story hours at public libraries. Chemical child castration in efforts to early transition. And pedophiles are rebranding themselves as minor attracted persons or being welcomed into the LGBTQ community. So my question to you is, with all this happening, what is the threshold for mainstream conservatives to actually stand for Christian conservative principles and not just be progressives that are 5 years behind the curve?
That's a mouthful. No, I certainly agree. If anyone's watched my content, I've taken a lot of flack. You know, the fig shirt, by the way, I think we'll be able to, this is just a fig. I wouldn't know a fig unless, I've only ever had them in Newton's. But I will say, you kind of tossed a lot in there. So if we're talking about chemical castration of kids and transition, that's child abuse, okay? That's wrong. And if we're talking about this idea that men and women are fundamentally interchangeable and you can declare yourself to be whatever sex you want. By the way, the idea that gender and sex are different, that's a very new idea. Don't let your college professors sell you that. It's a very new idea. It started in the 1950s with French existentialists, again, the cigarette smokers. Oh, maybe I can have a cock. You know? But even back then, they still believed there were only two genders. That's what's crazy. You go back to Simone de Beauvoir, they only believed there were only two genders. Then you had John Money. Are you familiar with John Money? Okay. So are you familiar with the studies that he did?
Two boys and one.
Yeah, he had two twins, and he would put one in sexually dominant positions, right? This was taught in school. Then we found out both kids ended up killing themselves because he was a sexually abusive, I guess you would say, authority figure. Obviously, that's terrible. And it really took all the way up until, I think Judith Butler, she just came out and had a tussle with Naomi Wolf, which, you know, two feminists having an argument, it's just a lesbian chain gang. Like, I mean, you know, like you don't want anyone to get hurt, but, you know, it's not quite the Jets and the Sharks. It's just, you know, someone's de-perm gets tussled. I guess de-perms aren't still a thing. Who got a perm in the last few decades? So I think those things are important. Now, and I've spoken against them for a long time. And something else as it relates, though, to gay marriage, because you toss that all in there. And I bet you that here you would probably have some conservatives who don't believe that same-sex marriage should be a thing, and certainly don't believe that it should be a federal thing. And then you probably have some conservatives here who share an opinion that I shared on Dave Rubin's show a very long time ago. This is when our channel was maybe, I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000. And Dave Rubin asked me about same-sex marriage. And he said, well, do you support same-sex marriage? And I said, no. He said, what? And I said, listen, I don't give a rat's ass who you rump range. Like, that doesn't bother me. I don't care. But I don't think that marriage is a fundamental human right. I don't think that anyone has a birthright to get married. When we talk about fundamental human rights, we're talking about what? The right to speak freely, the right to worship freely, the right to protect yourself, your God-given right to self-defense, which is a firearm. Being married to someone, that's a privilege because you have to find a suitor, by the way. And for me, it was hard for a long time. In case you couldn't tell, people weren't beating down my door. All of a sudden, I have a few million subscribers. I'm kind of cute. But he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, here's the thing. This was kind of new. I said, once you declare marriage a fundamental human right, then you infringe on the church because a church can no longer decide that they will not marry two men and they can lose their tax-exempt status, or a Christian business. And he said, well, that's kind of crazy. I said, well, trust me, that's what's going to happen because we had Canadian pastors who were jailed. I think someone can fact-check me on this. I think the guy's name was Boisson, who was jailed for saying, I'm never going to marry two guys in my church. By the way, notice Beto O'Rourke never says mosques, right? Like, any church who won't marry two guys, they should lose their tax-exempt status. And there's every mosque in the country like, we're right here. He's like, I don't want to get blown up, so you guys are fine. Kickflip, whoa! So I think really a lot of those problems are solved by understanding the constitutional parameters of government. I believe anyone should be able to get a civil union that they want, and states can recognize that, and marriage should be in a church. Marriage should be something that the church recognizes, and civil union should be something that the government recognizes. Now, that being said, right, we go into why is marriage recognized by the government, okay? This is just something, a little history lesson. The reason we recognize marriage as a nuclear family, right, mother, father, and child, is because before federal government, before state government, before local government, we understood that the only way you could have a society is if the building blocks, the fabric of that society was a nuclear family. Doesn't take a village, it takes a mommy and a daddy. And so that's why I support, of course, the idea of traditional marriage. I think a child does best with a mother and a father in the home. I do not think that a man who identifies as a woman can give everything to a child that a mother can, just like I don't think that two men can give everything to a child that a mother and a father can. But I do recognize that states have the right to recognize civil unions as they want. My problem is when they start infringing on the church. So I think a lot of conservatives probably share that point of view, and I think you know, listen, there are differing point of views. The good news is we don't all have to be like the left, and that we don't all have to follow lockstep and silence people we disagree with. But thank you for your question, sir.
Sorry.
Yes. All right, so is this an ironic communist hat?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't know, you got the military fatigues, you look a little pissed off.
No, actually, I was gonna buy the Che Guevara shirt, but my mom was gonna kill me if I actually did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Your mom's a Che Guevara fan?
Oh, no, we're from Venezuela.
Oh, okay. So, she's more of a Maduro gal.
Oh, no, hell no.
Give me an M, give me an A, give me a D, give me a, I'm starving. Okay, go ahead. I'm joking!
It's actually true, so.
It's what?
It's actually true, so.
It's actually true? Your mother's starving and you say that laughing? You're worse than the Joker guy. He's like, it's true. My mommy's very hungry.
Well,
Every now and then I throw like nerds candy at her through a cage. I'm joking. Okay, what's your question, sir?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you and like everybody here present, because before I came to this country 2 years ago, everybody told me, and it was like common culture, that white people was racist and everybody with a gun was a crazy person. But I want to thank y'all to prove that all that is wrong, and I'm blessed to be in the best country in the world.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, hold on 1 second. He said something. Say that real quick. I don't want to get back to your question.
All right, so again, a reminder, if you are in Mug Club, you're going to get an email. If you signed up for Mug Club today, you won't get an email just because the way the system works. You can sign in through your subscription and you'll be able to see a video of me and Pantelis telling you about the details for the after party. So either email or video.
Get out of here. You got a dog roast to get to. Okay. Now, sorry, I mean, he has to drown a baby. I don't know. He's my lawyer. Oh, I guess I should say chair. No, listen, this is one thing that I do think is important because this is organic and this can't be faked, okay? You just talked about 2 years that you've been in this country? And when you first came to this country, you sort of thought that white people were racist and everyone had a gun was crazy.
Yeah, and like, it was funny because I didn't know English that well whenever I came.
Yeah.
But nobody even made fun of my accent.
I just did, but it's okay. I was more so making fun of you laughing at your starving mother. But here's something that's really interesting to me, right? When they want to say, when the left try to say that the conservative consists of mainly alt-right people who don't have a problem with illegal immigration, who just have a problem with anyone who isn't white coming to this country. You guys weren't prompted. I didn't say a word. We have a brown man who's lived here for 2 years, who came from Venezuela and said, hey, I'm blessed to be the best country in the world. And every single person in this room shouted at him with your applause, we're blessed to have you right back. That's all. Yeah. Because let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something. Every now and then I'll get some trolls who'll be like, can you name any single country that's been successful, that's had immigrants ever? They're gonna destroy Western culture. Every now and then you do see some people who are extremists, and I go, hold on a second. Are there any societies that have been successful with immigrants? I don't know. I point to the United States. Now, what does that mean? This is important. this is important to understand, right? We didn't lose our culture in the United States. First off, when we created the Constitution, that all people were created equal. And of course, back then, most of them were white because slavery was bad, and then we kind of fixed it. On us, we screwed up. But we didn't lose our culture when we rightfully freed the slaves. We didn't lose our culture when the Italians came over. We didn't lose our culture when the Irish came over. We didn't lose our culture when the Polish came over. We didn't lose our culture when the Jews came over. The only problem that we've had with immigration is a modern leftist philosophy that flies in the face of a melting pot where people like yourself come in to be a part of the great experiment that is the United States of America. That's a very new idea. A new idea that you can migrate to this country, whether legally or illegally, and not take part in the culture, not learn a language, and not be an American first. And that's why I have a real problem. I'm not as concerned with Venezuelan Americans coming here who are anti-American. I'm more concerned with anti-American Americans who want to bring people in here who don't like this country. And that's why if you line them up and you give me a choice between an angry, raspy feminist with blue hair and a pussy hat or even Elizabeth Warren and some Bangladeshi who's coming here who wants to open up a business and fly the American flag and be a part of this culture, guess what? I'm picking Haji every single time. So thank you so much. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's like James Brown. I can't stop myself. I can't stop. And I go down. Well, I don't have any cool people to put a blanket on me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So actually,
hey, aren't these caskets cool? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So actually, my only question, I have been like amazed by everything in America, everything but one thing. I'm amazed and at the same time
Fat people.
horrified. No, how popular socialism has been here in America, especially because I have seen like what can it do to a wonderful country, and I really don't want that to happen to America. But my question is, why do you think it became so popular over here?
Because I've never lived it. That's it. I know I should, I just kind of went off, I gave you a soliloquy. The truth is, as it relates to socialism, no one here has ever actually lived it. I mean, I know Bernie Sanders honeymooned in a tent in the USSR, but outside of that, no one's ever lived. Like, I was raised in Quebec, which isn't socialist like Venezuela, but we do have a socialized healthcare system. We do have a 52% income tax, and it's actually, you don't have to be making that much to be in that highest income tax bracket. I lived it, and as it relates to like socialized healthcare, that's a good example, right? Here's what often happens, okay? This is why I think so. They haven't lived it, but they also get tricked by the same media who wants to silence Generation Z, by the way. Here's what you often see, like let's take healthcare for an example. By the way, how's healthcare in Venezuela compared to the United States?
Stuff.
You have free stuff. Is it good?
No.
Okay. I already told you my mom was starving. So what they do, and you see this a lot from the left, and I hear this in the debates, and I'm amazed. This is one thing that hopefully you guys understand and see this sort of bait and switch that happens a lot. The left, what they do is they say, hey, the United States, we spend too much on healthcare. Understood. We do have a system that's broken. It's not flawless. They say every single other industrialized country has socialized healthcare. Okay, they're not necessarily all the same kind of system, but I do understand they have something more similar to what you would see as socialized healthcare compared to the United States. And then they say they spend less, and by the way, they have better healthcare. By the way, they rank Venezuela above the United States. This comes from 2 studies. Okay, this is important to note. What they do is they talk about healthcare, and they talk about the problems that we have in the United States objectively, and we do have problems. And then what they say is these healthcare systems in other countries are better, and all of a sudden they start pushing subjective ratings. Comes from 2 studies. Comes from one is the World Health Organization. They did their global rankings, okay? Has the United States ranked right between, if I'm not mistaken, Slovenia and Colombia. Yeah, go in next time you need to have a root canal. Pablo Escobar shows up. I mean, it is unbelievable. And then there's one other one. The more recent one was the Commonwealth study. So these are the only 2 studies that I know of. And by the way, the Commonwealth studies, I believe that was the organization. We wrote about it on the website. They listed 11 different countries for healthcare. And they ranked them, and they said, okay, these are the best from best to worst. Do you know who was ranked 11th? The United States. Do you know who was ranked number 1? The UK. Now, here's the thing. How did they come up with those rankings? Does anyone here, even if you're a liberal, does anyone here believe that our healthcare is not as good as Cuba or Slovenia, for God's sakes? No, of course not. What they do is say we have problems, and then they say these people have better healthcare. Why? because they're happier with their health care. Well, that doesn't matter. If I give somebody a shit sandwich and they're happy because it's free, it doesn't mean that it's better than me having a meal of broccoli and chicken breast and quinoa, right? You can say all you want that my meal's more expensive and the person who's starving who has a crap sandwich is happier with it. That doesn't mean that it's objectively better than the United States. I'm amazed that nobody talks about this more. Conservatives get sucked into it a lot and they say, well, these countries are ranked higher than the United States. Okay, let's take the one that's ranked number one in the most recent study. Guess what they have there? Guess, we want to look at objective outcomes? Mortality rate, your likelihood of suffering, of dying from a serious illness. It's 2 to 3 to 4 times higher in the UK. I think we have the numbers. It was like 2.5 times more likely to die from breast cancer, from prostate cancer. The wait times are exponentially higher than the United States. Drug development doesn't come out of these countries, but guess what? People who don't have to pay, even if they're in countries where they're paying 60% income tax, right, and they can't afford a car like in Denmark because the tax is so overwhelming, so they all drive old gay Passats. They think that their healthcare is better because they see it as free. Don't be fooled by the rankings that list our healthcare lower than other countries because of subjectivity and people saying that they like their healthcare more. And that tricks a lot of young Americans to go, well, hold on, socialism must be doing it right. It's a lie. It's not true. You don't have to buy it. Cut that shit off at the pass. Thank you very much, sir, for your question. In case you haven't heard, I'm losing my voice, so let's do 2 more questions. So if you want to grab there. No, I know, but listen to this. Do you hear this? It's disgusting. I sound like Tom Sizemore after a bender. Yes, Mr. Hawaiian shirt. What's your name, sir?
Hi, Stephen. I'm John.
John. Okay, very nice. Thank you.
So, Mr. Crowder, it's a question about tech censorship.
About what?
About tech censorship.
About tech censorship?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
After being demonetized by YouTube, you have been very anti-tech censorship. Yet, when nationalists who are more conservative than you are unfairly censored, like Nick Fuentes being kicked off of PayPal and Politicon events, James Allsup being banned off YouTube and Twitter, and Vincent James being demonetized, you don't seem to have the same anti-tech censorship vigor. If you oppose tech censorship, will you strongly advocate against the censorship of these individuals specifically? And would you consider having Nick Fuentes on your show to talk about where tech censorship is affecting conservatives online the most?
Well, listen, I appreciate the question. I'm not really familiar with Nick Fuentes, so I can't promise that I would have him on the show, and I have no idea why he was removed. I do know that when I see it with people where it's unfair, for example, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or we saw it with Dave Rubin, we've done everything that we possibly can in our power to defend them. There's been no one at the front lines more than us. But there are also some people who get removed who have smaller channels that we don't necessarily even know about. So I can't answer the question because I'm not familiar with Nick Fuentes. I've had some people ask me in the past if I will defend folks who've actually violated terms of service by doxing people. I have no idea if he's done that. I assume that he probably hasn't. But anytime somebody is simply being targeted and silenced because of their opinion, regardless of how unpopular it may be, yeah, I don't think that people should be deplatformed. But I don't want to answer regarding someone who I'm not necessarily familiar with. But I appreciate your question. The spirit of it remains the same. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder.
Thank you. And by the way, I will say, I will defend your right to wear that Hawaiian shirt out in public and not get your ass kicked. It takes brass balls to wear a Hawaiian shirt and face the likely ass beating that is coming your way as soon as you cross the Y. I'm kidding. Thank you. All right, yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and
Andrew.
Yes.
Good. There you go.
So,
named after a strong man, Andrew Breitbart.
Yeah. So on Monday, I was watching your video about Kanye when he was talking about pornography and everything like that. And I know. But
that's all I got. That's my Kanye West impression.
One of the biggest things I've seen for my time in college, I've been here for 5 years, so whoop to that. But go chemical engineering.
Wait, you've been here for 5 years?
Yes.
Are you getting your master's?
No.
Okay. Okay. And what's funny is he has the A&M, he has the college shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, Bluto Blutarski is here to ask a question.
I know. But
7 years of college down the drain. It's okay.
The life of an engineer.
We all have hiccups.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So.
But it's okay. You're white. They'll let you skate through. Oh, so you guys didn't know? Well, you thought we had to take tests? No. Just swipe our white privilege card. Find an Asian. Let him raise the GPA. Go ahead.
So the biggest things that I've been seeing lately, and just through my time in college, is this huge like push for like sex and drugs and everything like that. So like impure stuff. And as a Christian, I am constantly like fighting for this, like against it, and trying to live in the life of purity. So my question
You're
is,
also fighting your own biology.
I know.
That's tough. It's the hardest thing.
So, how do you be pure in this time?
Whew, that's a pretty broad question.
Like,
it may be a very thin
about it.
question. I have no idea. But, penis joke. Is there anything more specific? Like, how do you be pure in this time? Like, just, you know, like, don't.
Like, more like sexual
Don't put it places that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, but more like sexual impurity. How do you stay? Like, for me, I am a Christian, so I want to be as faithful as possible. So, from knowing that you are a Christian and seeing like all your stuff from Fox News and everything for your no sex before marriage stuff.
It took a lot of flack for that. Apparently, that was a controversial position to be like, I'm not having sex until married. Like, you monster!
It's controversial.
Like I was Ed Furlong in frickin' American History X, yeah.
How do you stay pure in this time? Because of how much they're pushing for sex, drugs, and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's very difficult. And this is one thing. And listen, I'll say this. You're a good-looking chap. Aside from the 5 years in college, I assume...
Hey, I'm going to make a lot of money soon.
Okay, all right, yeah. Bet on it. Yeah, well, you know, maybe you can pair up with the Venezuelan's mother and you can, you know, help bring her over here because... No! Shut up! The Venezuelan is laughing. He's not mad about it. A bunch of white people are... I was fine when he talked about chairs. Oh my God, there's... Did you know there's another Joker there? I had no idea. That is testicle retractingly scary to use the term from Patton Oswalt. I think he coined that. Maybe afterwards we can break a pool cue and you can have tryouts. That would be great. Okay, this will be the last question. And it is pretty broad, so I hope that I can be of service to you here. Listen, the reason I say you're a good-looking guy is because I know how many people here identify as Christians. Oh wow, that's a lot of them. Okay, we could have been doing a Kanye service right here. Ha! Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what high fashion done for me. Ha! Shut up. No, I'm really glad that Kanye has come out, and I think he can influence a lot of people. The reason I say, you know, you're a good-looking guy, you seem to have your stuff together, is there's this sort of stereotype of Christians who wait until they're married or who don't have sex because they don't have an option, because they don't have a choice. And listen, I understand that I'm no Gregory Peck. You are Generation Z. I wanted to make sure. I don't know. I'm no Yul Brenner. I'm no Code Jack. But I did have some options. Like, I'm right in the middle there. I'm average enough, and I was articulate enough that when I was on the road, it was incredibly difficult to not have sex because there was an option on the table. And so I felt like it was pretty important for me to talk about that so other people out there who were struggling with it understood, and they understood that there were people out there who weren't being abstinent by choice, right? And here's the thing. Everyone raised their hand as far as Christians, and a lot of you are young, right? How many here are actual virgins? No. No. Because I'm looking at a lot of beautiful faces. Oh, that one lady right there in the red, she went, shh, you. Listen, if that's true, great. Okay, hold on a second. Are you guys like Bill Clinton virgins? Like, depends on what the definition of is, and you're using a cigar and a humidor and some kind of, is that like, all right, if you guys are all virgins, listen, I will say this. I would not see that amount of hands 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. When I wrote those, I think those articles I wrote about 8 years ago. And I remember I got into a heated argument with Amy Schumer on Red Eye over it. And did anyone ever see that argument with Amy Schumer? Okay. I remember at the time I felt really embarrassed. And the reason I felt embarrassed was because she went after me really hard personally. And I remember thinking, man, you know, if I don't volley back here, I'm a bad comedian. But if I do and I just make it personal, I'd be a bad Christian. And it was really tough. And when I got off I left Red Eye and I got on the phone with my pastor. I'm like, man, I don't know, what should I have done? Because I don't want to seem like a stick in the mud, but I also want to be authentic about who I am. You know, we hear be real, but people always want you to be real until you're actually being authentic in a way that's uncomfortable. And, you know, I'd been in stand-up clubs where people could be up there pantomiming threesomes and, you know, like donkey shows from Mexico and horrible shit. And I'd be like, I don't have sex. It's like, oh my God. People got more uncomfortable when I talked about that. It was the last taboo. And I don't know if you remember Amy Schumer in that debate. She said, like, well, I just think you shouldn't have that opinion because when you're older and you're married, you're probably going to be into some really weird shit. That's what she said. Well, listen, I'm older, I'm married. She was correct. I have had the cops called at my house. And my neighbor was a sex offender, and that's not a joke. So as a Christian, I want to be really clear. And sometimes, listen, I know I go too far. I can be rough around the edges. Sometimes I have a potty mouth. I get it. The reason that I do that is just because I feel like if I start censoring myself, it becomes church where people aren't honest about their flaws. People aren't honest about their sins. Doesn't mean that sin and flaws should be glorified. I don't think that at all. I don't think if I use a naughty word or if I make a joke that's inappropriate, that it's something that should be glorified. Sometimes I just can't help it, and I feel ashamed. And I'm like, but it's so funny though. And half the time my dad's like, what's the joke? It's Caitlyn Jenner saying, you got to do it. I'm like, Dad, are you serious? But anyway, the point is, the reason that I talk about these things as bluntly as I possibly can is because I want people out there to not feel alone. It is a very difficult struggle. Listen, a young man with your hormones raging, I see you looking at your watch right now. I don't know where you got to be. I imagine it's a laptop with the doors closed. No! Don't shame him! Do not shame him! Start a small group, become his accountability partner, hide all the lubriderm. No, I know you're open about this.
Yeah,
What I'm saying.
like most
So
people
what I'm saying
are.
is, okay, let's be honest. Have you struggled with pornography?
Yes, and I'm open to
How
saying
many
that.
guys here struggle with pornography? Yeah, this is one thing I talk about. There you go. Well, hold on a second. He's standing up. He's like, me! Yeah. Oh my God! It's not a struggle? Porn kills love. Okay. I can't read your t-shirt. I just saw you here. I just saw you stand up at porn! And that's one thing too at church, right? At church, you see, we've talked about this with Kanye. People go up and they talk about who's freed you from your sins? And people go up and they say, I was addicted, to heroin. And everyone's like, and they're praying on them and they're holding snakes and stuff. It's like, I mean, not really, but the point is that people go up like, I was freed from heroin. People go up and they're like, man, I was a junkie, I was homeless. And it's this great story, right? And everyone sees it as this triumph. It's the underdog story. But guess what? No one really feels that empathetic for the middle-class, seemingly privileged American who has porn pumped into his phone and his computer day in and day out that he cannot avoid. You don't have to go looking for this problem. It's innate. We're hardwired to like sex. Listen, naked ladies are good looking. I have one. It's great. It's so easy to prey on people with pornography. And so people aren't nearly, I think I was talking with Gerald G. Morgan Jr. about this at his church, where they had these sort of small groups like recovery and stuff like that. And when I was dealing with drugs and all these other problems, or workaholics, which was just an excuse for people to network and go through their Rolodex. But then when it's about sexual problems or pornography, no one signs up on the list. Because everyone's ashamed of it. Why? Because you're not going to a dark alley, wrapping some surgical tubing around your arm and injecting yourself in some, subway rest stop like Russell Brand circa 2006. It's delivered to you right away. Everyone struggles with it. And everyone struggles with wanting to have sex when you're a young adult, when you're in your teens, when you're in your 20s, and everyone is telling you that you're weird if you don't. Listen, you're not weird if you don't. And this is something sometimes I've been led astray just because I will support someone who's making the hard decision just because it's a hard decision, even if I don't agree with them. And this is something that I would say to people out there. I've talked about not necessarily just working hard, but working smart, okay? And that is important because I did get to a point in my life where I would burn myself out. And I was working 14, 15-hour days nonstop. I wasn't taking any breaks. And you know what? I'll be honest, I wasn't respecting the Sabbath, as a Christian. I wasn't doing that. I was working. I thought I had to keep going. So I've learned to work smart, not necessarily just work hard. But this is one thing that I've got to drill into you guys, and it's the same thing with Generation Z being more conservative. Everyone here, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but you've made a hard decision to be here to take the positions that you do. This is not popular. I know A&M is a little bit of an outlier, but on campus, it is hard to have the points of view that you do, and I guarantee you that if you speak up at a party and talk about abstinence, you're probably not the most popular guy. I don't know, may not be the abstinence. I can't get close to you. Could be body odor. My point is, I have no idea. I assume it's not. You don't have to work hard. You have to work smart. But I will say this. Always leave the hard door open. In other words, don't close a door. Don't make a decision based on what is easiest. Sometimes maximal impact with minimal effort is the most effective decision. Sometimes it's the right decision. But often we see people eliminate the decisions that cause discomfort or decisions that are hard. You have to in your life. You don't always have to pick the hard path, but you always have to leave that path open as a possibility. Because let me tell you something too. I've talked about this. People always say this, failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. That's not true either. Failure is always an option. As a matter of fact, failure is often the easiest, most readily available option. Don't live your life where you simply walk through easy door after easy door after easy door. Because guess what? If you walk through every single easy door and you shut yourself off to hard decisions, you wouldn't be a conservative. You certainly wouldn't be a Christian in 2019 on campus. And you certainly wouldn't be denying yourself the most innate biological urge, which is to procreate with attractive women. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's something everyone here needs to understand too. The devil's not going to be showing up on one of these creaky coffins, so that's pretty damn cool. I think we did a good job with it. The devil's going to show up as someone who says, you know what? Just a tip. No, listen. And I'm saying that. I know some Christians like, that's crude. Yeah, it is crude. That's the world that we live in. Not glorifying it. That's how temptation's going to show up. It's going to show up in the form of a busty secretary. It's going to show up in the form of, I don't know, maybe some kind of alcoholism. It's going to show up in that group of friends who pull you away from your values more and more and more. And this is one thing that I will say, and I'll leave you on this note, okay, because it ties back to what we were talking about with Generation Z. You cannot, just like someone asked me a question, I've had a few questions tonight where people have asked me to speak for people who I don't necessarily know or I don't necessarily represent. I try to not make it a practice to speak on issues I don't know or speak regarding people I don't know. Why? It's important. I think as conservatives, we all innately understand, listen, you cannot control what other people think about you. You cannot control other people's perception of you. If you're a conservative on campus and you're living your values and you're being authentic and you're doing the right thing as best you can, you have no control over how people interact with you, over what people think of you. You can only control yourself. But here's something we don't always talk about. That same coin, the flip side of it, is only you can control you. Meaning you cannot allow other people to control you. If you can't control them, they cannot control you. They cannot control what you do. They cannot control what you say. They cannot control what kind of self-defense mechanism you purchase. They cannot control what you eat. They cannot control how much money you should be making because someone has an opinion that they want you to go into a CLSC publicly funded socialized healthcare shit program. No one else has the right to control you. And they will try to control you for the rest of your life. They'll try to do it through intimidation. They'll try to do it through isolation. They'll try to do it through making you feel less than because you're living your life truthfully and because you're leaving that hard door open. And guess what? Usually the people who try to control you, those are the people who all together are marching through that easy door every single time for the rest of their life. And you know what? Maybe it might be hard. It might be difficult. You may fall short. But if you're one of those people who try to control everybody else, you've lived an asshole's life. That's my point of view. Thank you guys so much for everything that you've done, how bold you guys are. God bless you. God bless A&M. God bless Texas. Thank you.